Jimmie Johnson wrote history last year by winning a 4th consecutive championship. He'll do it again today by winning a 5th consecutive Sprint Cup Series championship here in Ford Championship Weekend.
You are looking at the 5-time champion.
You're kidding me! Yeah! Woo! You guys are the best. I cannot believe we did this. Unbelievable.
Welcome back to Late Shift. That's what it sounded like just a few weeks ago at Homestead Miami Speedway, where Jimmie Johnson and the Lowe's Chevrolet team from Hendrick Motorsports picked up their 5th consecutive Sprint Cup Series championship. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Alex Hayden, along with the great Buddy Baker. Time to go to the Verizon Wireless Hotline as we bring in the personal trainer for Jimmie Johnson and owner of Sitaras Fitness. We welcome to the show Mr. John Sitaras. Welcome, John. How you doing this evening?
Good. How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Man, it's our pleasure. And I was going to ask you, I'm sure you have a lot of different clients that do other things in sports, but is there a different regimen for a race car driver compared to a tennis star?
Sure. Usually every athlete has a different set of skills they need specifically, whether it's lateral movement, a little bit more in linear motion. So with that, you want some have to have greater power, greater agility, some have to have greater endurance, greater cardiorespiratory, and then also depends on how long the actual duration of the session is for the sport. With NASCAR drivers, as you know, they pretty much in the temperature inside the car will indicate the hydration levels of the athlete. So you would have to be prepped and be able to endure that heat. So you will have to be practiced where you're going to have to be able to what's called absorption ratio to pick up when you're getting hydrated or whatnot.
How did all of this come about? Is this the first time you've worked with a race car driver in general? And then I guess second part of that is how did this all come about with Jimmie Johnson?
Oh, it's great. It's like for me out of a storybook. I'm a science geek by nature, so I'm obsessed with just working, so to speak, in my lab here and doing exercises for every single background you can imagine. When Jimmie came in, he came in through a friend and was pretty much going to go through a workout if you were, let's say, traveling out of state on vacation and getting in the workout. So when he came in, I pretty much started where, instead of just doing a workout, assessing him. And he came in pretty good shape, and it was a pleasure to assess him. So I didn't follow the sport. Up in New York City, we don't really follow NASCAR, but now my entire member base here, we're all big fans, and we watch it, and a lot more respect for what goes into the sport.
I was going to ask you also, I read a little bit about you before we started to talk, and you have actually been to some stock car races and kind of got an idea of what Jimmie goes through.
Yes, absolutely. And you appreciate it. I just recently brought my entire team, and they all got to go to their first race, and it was in Dover, and he happened to win that, and they couldn't believe how loud it was and the feel of it. I think NASCAR is probably one of the only sports where you don't really, if you haven't been to the track, you don't really understand how loud, how fast it is. It looks like the TV doesn't really pick that up when you're there live. Yes, and so I would go to several races. This year I went to the first race, I went to the last race, I went one right in the middle, and then I got to see what he does, how his team operates, how long the race is, and usually there's no breaks. If there's a break with a caution, you're still sitting in the car, so I get to see his world several years back.
As far as the NASCAR experience and going to that event, did that change the way you approached the training of Jimmie after you saw it firsthand, or did you pretty much stay in the same training regimen?
Pretty much stay in the same training regimen. Everyone who comes in, I pretty much dissect the muscle. I analyze what your type 1 fiber is, and which is your endurance, what your type 2 fiber is, which is your strength, the cardiorespiratory, the flexibility. So pretty much I have to what's called X-ray the body and know every single muscle, where he is, what his output is, what his threshold is. And then from there, depending on, then we plot the course. So as a driver, I know his needs are, and then I know his it did help per se that when I was measuring and taking some assessments, he seemed to be really tight on one side with his muscles, and then by the very nature just turning left, you can see that most of the pressure and the G-force is pushed on one side more than the other. So it helped with the picture of where all this was playing into. But as far as assessing it, it didn't really change much. Science is science any which way you slice it.
Do you get into the nutrition as far as what he consumes and keep up with that? And does he have a list of things that even when he can't come up and work in your facility, he has a list of things to go through?
Well, in terms of his nutrition or the workout?
Both.
Both. His workout, yes. It's in his workout during the course of the race. We usually have 4 weightlifting days, and they can go anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours. And we have every single rep and every single set and every single exercise and the actual sequence of it and the timing of it listed out for him. He then has to check everything off and then tell me how he performed per set and rep. And so I know his exact threshold, and he has a list to go by. And then we have during the chase where he's doing 3 lifting instead of 4, but we also do a lot of running. So he has to do cardiorespiratory, and he has to do anywhere from 2 miles to 7-mile runs, and at timed. And we can do sometimes 4 or 5 days of running in addition to the weightlifting. And in addition to, he has a daily, it changes his abdominals. He has to do about anywhere from 1,000 plus repetitions on his abdominals per week, and that changes daily, so that way he doesn't peak. We don't want to give him the same regimen, so that way his body adapts, and then all of a sudden what happens is you peak early, and then the injuries are higher. When you change it and it evolves with the athlete, his chances of peaking are very low and injuries are low. So that he has. And then with his nutrition, it's evolved over the years. It's gotten better, and he's able to have a handle on it when he travels, and we worked together on it, and he works as well in putting what he can or not. And it's also really the timing of it, because he didn't really eat poorly. It was just getting in the right proteins at the right time, before the workout, after the workout, during the race, what happens after the race, before he goes to sleep. So it evolved much more so in the last year. It's the last year and a half. Really, he's really hasn't missed a beat there.
John Sitaras is joining us here on Late Shift via the Verizon Wireless Hotline. He is the trainer for Jimmie Johnson. And the NASCAR schedule, John, is demanding. You're on the road 36 weeks just for races, let alone out on the road for tests and things of that nature, and personal appearances and sponsor appearances. How do you stay on top of what Jimmie's doing when he's on the road traveling?
Well, that's it. My hat goes off to him. He really gets the work done. We have a form to follow, so he knows exactly day one, being Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every single day. He knows what workouts he has to do, what abdominals. So it's broken down into programs, and based on his schedule, sometimes it can go really smoothly, and he can get all 3 or 4 days in a row, and he can get it all in. Other times it's separated. At the end of the day, if he gets it in for the week, we're in the clear. Some weeks are tougher than others. We miss maybe a run here and there. We miss part of the workout. But for the most part, he gets everything in, and there's a list, and he has to. It's hard. He has to sometimes. I see he has to wake up 5:36 in the morning and start sharp to get the workout in, because his day is going to be in a press conference and meeting people and also getting tests, running the car, and so. I don't know exactly what he does for the day. I just know it's a very full day, and my job is to make sure he gets everything in on my part. So he does it really well. He juggles it all. He gets the workouts in, and then I'm sure he does everything he needs to do with Chad and everything else for Lowe's. And he's really, really a tough worker.
I was going to ask you, the age-old thing that we run into a lot, and I'm a past driver myself. I think we're athletes, but so many people say that race car drivers are not athletes. Do you consider Jimmie Johnson an athlete?
Absolutely. Well, see, what happens is in the sport in general, I have some trainers here who compete in mixed martial arts, and they're sweating and they're hitting the bag, and then they got to see Jimmie race, and they see how Jimmie trains here and how he's training just like a boxer, he's training just like a bodybuilder, a power lifter, a gymnast, and what happens is most people just think of it as like a country sport, so to speak. Let's say if you, they think just driving to the airport and back, that's driving, anyone can do it. And then most people get to play tennis. So when they get to play tennis, they get to say, oh, wow, when they go to a U.S. Open, they get to see those athletes in motion, and they can't see the ball, and they have a lot more respect for it. Most people never get to go in an actual stock car and go 150 to 200 miles an hour on the track. They think just driving forward, back and forth to work is what he does. So they don't really have, and myself included, when you don't have that experience or that foresight going into the actual track and seeing what they have to do. If everyone had access, like to the country club sports, like I was saying, and they got to play tennis or golf, like the athletes, and they got to see, wow, this is where I am, and this is where they are, and their hand-eye coordination. So what makes an athlete great is very different, just like golf. It's having the talent and this set of muscles and the eye and hand-eye coordination, the reflex, and putting it all together. So, the difference between getting in a basketball and getting into a dunk and watching all the top athletes across the board, most of us would get to play the sport in a backyard or in a country club and have an appreciation, oh, wow, I'm over here, and look, imagine having a score like that, you would have to do so much more. But in general, most people don't get to go in the stock car and say, well, this is where they are and this is where I am, and I get to compare my skill sets against theirs. They don't get to do that. It would be nice that everyone gets a test run it, and then we'll have the appreciation for it. And then that's pretty much, I think, my opinion, because I got to watch my demographic here are members from all over the world, and they didn't have an understanding of NASCAR. And I think people who don't really follow the sport think that the person just drives around and it's just like going to the grocery store, and which is not the case, as you know, being a driver yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely on that. What about now that we're in the off season for NASCAR right now? Do you